You're listening to Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life. Thank you very much for staying tuned. I am Mairo-Ese. And now time for today's edition of Business Express 981. This morning I have Onome joining me for conversation around trending business news in and outside Nigeria. Good morning, Onome. How are you today?
Good morning, Ayo. How are you doing? I noticed that you skipped my surname. We'll come back to that tomorrow.
Don't worry, we've said it that it's on first name basis for Business Express. You know, we have so many things to discuss. We don't want to spend time discussing second names. But yes,
Okay.
like you mentioned, tomorrow we'll get into that. Shall we not? Okay, so we have a number of things to get through this morning. First off is I'm sure a number of people would be interested in our headliner for today, which is breaking down Femi Otedola's increase in his investment. However, that is in his First Bank shares. However, before we discuss that, let's talk about how you can be a part of the show. You can head on to our YouTube channel, YouTube Smooth 981 FM is the handle. Search for us there and you'd see that we're live. You can watch and also leave your comments on there. You can send us a WhatsApp message to our WhatsApp number. Here it is 0809 444 0981. I'll take that again. It's 0809 444 0981. So, Onome, can you help us make sense of Femi Otedola's increase in shareholdings of First Bank? Because there have been a lot of debates, conversations, is this not, and so on. And it would be good to just have a clear idea of what's going on.
Okay, so as we know, First Bank has been in the news, I would say, for the last couple of months. There was some boardroom intrigue, and so what happened? So what's trading on the stock exchange is FBN Holdings, right? But formerly it used to be the bank that was trading. So what we have is a holding company. So there was some board intrigues in the bank. The CBN stepped in, removed a couple of people from the board of the bank. Fast forward a few months down the line, and we started seeing some huge volumes of shares trading. So we knew somebody was, taking a position. So I think that, Otedola deciding to take up a stake is in some ways coming full circle, because if you remember around 2011, 2012, he was a big investor in the stock market, right? Then he had issues with his business. He had to pay off an $800 million debt to Ancom. So he gave up a lot of his investments, right? So I think this is him just deciding that, you know what, I'm in a good place again. I think this is a bit undervalued, so let me take up a position, right?
Mm-hmm.
But aside of Otedola, I know there are a couple of other billionaires who are behind the scenes, and I guess that in the coming days, we're going to have a bit more clarity as to the holdings that they have in FBN.
Mm. All right. So, would you call this a tussle for control at the top?
I wouldn't use the word tussle. I would say maybe positioning, because I think one thing I've seen in this space, and maybe it's a Nigerian thing, you'll be shocked at who owns what in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen cases whereby you have some really top names own a very popular asset, and there's no association with it. They don't do anything about it. Then you wake up one morning and you just see that, okay, they've just decided to come out. So I think it's just positioning, right? Because when you look at it, everybody who is involved in this stake probably owns between 5% at most 10%, right? So you still probably have 70+% for the rest of the public and all that. So I think it's just positioning, really, and maybe they seeing a good business an investment opportunity and deciding to either up their stake or start building a position in it.
All right. So as far as the bank's regular operations are concerned, does this affect anything at all?
Not at all. I don't think it affects the bank's regular operations. And if for anything, I would say that because it's a systemically important bank, right?
Yeah.
And maybe because they've had the bank itself, and the bank is the biggest subsidiary, the bank itself has had issues with his loan book in the past. CBN is keeping an eye on things. So it's just normal board positioning, billionaires trying to position. So no problem with the bank. The bank is fine. Operations are normal. Nothing to worry about from that perspective.
All right, no cause for alarm. Everything is going fine in terms of operations. That's good to hear. Now, in the near future, near or distant, do you think there'll be more share acquisitions?
I think there will be, definitely. That's for sure, because if I'm to look at it, and broadly, this is looking at probably the top 5, top 6 banks on the exchange, and most of them are undervalued, right? So I think that's something to expect. This whole positioning, isn't over yet. So yeah, there's more to look out for.
All right. So more to look out for. Now, since we're talking about banking, I'd like to just get perhaps your take on a general overview on the banking industry in Nigeria. What's the banking sector like in so far in 2021? I mean, we're coming to the end of the year, but what would you say is your review of the banking sector?
I think it's mixed. What I've seen so far, some of the banks have started dropping 9-month numbers, right? Some banks have done quite well compared to last year. Some banks have done not so well compared to last year, and not because they went well run. It's just that there were a couple of one-time factors that occurred last year that didn't occur this year, right? So it's mixed, but I would say that when I look at maybe the top 5 banks, I think they are, maybe bad GT. They've all done exceedingly well compared to last year, right? And one thing I'm also seeing is that, I would say that the competition among the top 4, top 5 banks is going to get a bit more heated as they scale up, right? It's going to get a bit more heated. But I think all in all, it's been a good year. It's been a tough year, for the economy as a whole. So, but the banks have done fairly well, in my opinion.
All right, fantastic. That's great. Now, let's move to the Inera, right? President Buhari is set to launch it today. Are we looking at a game changer?
I would say yes, from a broader perspective, right? Yes, that would help. But from a retail perspective, I think it's going to take some time, before the everyday person on the street decides to adopt the Inera. But in the case of large-scale transfers, in the case of, how the settlement works, I think, yes, I would say so. And also in terms of data, one thing that maybe the crisis has taught us generally, when you look at economics and banking and finance, is having data helps, right? And when you look at it, the people who probably have the most data outside of government spheres on Nigerians is probably between the banks and the telcos. So having an e-wallet like this, I think maybe the CBN is probably going to have a better idea of what Nigerians are spending on and spending patterns, and ultimately bound. So it's a good thing, but it's going to take a while to percolate to the retail side.
All right. Excellent. So Zikolo asks a very good question. How exactly do you describe a bank that is doing well?
That's an interesting question. Should I give you the censored answer, or should I give you the uncensored answer?
Please give us the uncensored. We do it uncensored here on Business Express.
Okay. So if I were to describe a bank that is doing well, right? You have to look at, or what I tend to look at is, cost to income ratio, which is efficiency. How efficient is the bank when it comes to spending money, right? I look at the proportion of bad loans. I look at the increase in revenues, and especially the revenue split, right? But ultimately, if you're looking at the Nigerian banking space, right, the battle has always been between 2 banks, right? Yeah. You have Zenith versus GT Bank on one hand, and then you have the other 3, right? But that's changing because, Access has become a bigger bank following the merger with Diamond. So you're now going
acquisition, to... you mean? Was it a merger? But yeah, let's leave the argument.
Well, officially it's a merger. In reality, it's probably, something else. But what we are seeing now is that you're probably going to have that tussle between Zenith versus Access versus GT, right? Then you have UBA and FBN, right? So those are probably the top 5 by size. Then maybe to an extent, right? You can probably include Stanbic IBTC and FCMB, right? So that's really where the competition is and how they are ranked.
How do you think, let me ask you, sorry, just before you land on that, because Ola brings in an interesting perspective, so I'd like you to include that in your analysis, because he or she is saying, I disagree that banks have done well. Very few loans to SMEs and no multiplier effect on the economy. All they do is sell FX. Only in Nigeria do banks sell FX. That is not banking. What do you make of this? Just before, since you're still justifying why you consider them as doing well, bearing this in mind, what do you think?
But the challenge with loans in Nigeria is this. One, we need a better ID system, right? We need a better ID system. And two is that for as long as we have really high inflation, a really high cost of doing business for the banks, they're going to charge high interest rates for loans. And the majority of most SMEs can probably do what? Maybe 18, 20, sometimes as high as 25, 30% per annum on a loan, right? The few people who can do that are those who are in businesses that have a fast turnover, right? So, so really, from that perspective, I mean, you can't fault the banks, and it's business, right? Where you see opportunities to make money, you make money. I mean, some years banks make money from FX. Some years, like last year, they make money from trading fixed income instruments. So, I mean, it's where you see opportunities to make money that you make money, really. So you can't fault the banks, for trying to make money in this environment.
All right. Okay, then. Thank you very much. Ahmed from Ogudu says, if the FBN Holdings has a total of 39 billion units of shares in issue and Otedola has only 5.07%, how come everyone is saying that he will have control of the bank?
I think that was probably a misrepresentation by some sector of the press, because what I would like you to note, I mean, he's a big time investor, and so any move he makes is likely to be amplified, right? Sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. But the thing is, when you own 5% of something, then you are a key stakeholder. And if you're able to push up that 5% to 10%, right, you may be able to nominate someone to the board. Once you have someone on the board, you can influence, I would say, policy around what happens in the bank, right? So there are probably 4 or 5 popular Nigerian billionaire businessmen that are either trying to get to that position or will be in that position, right? So I think that's really the angle that people are watching out for.
All right. Thank you very much. We're almost out of time. But Precious Moga says, sorry to sound pessimistic, but there's no concrete economic justification for this CBN-backed Inera currency. It's just an attempt to put a check on the proliferation of other digital currency. Remind us of what happened to the yuan Nigeria or Naira deal. The number of comments have come through, but right, let's see. Okay, Ogeonochuko says that will this Inera solve a particular transaction problem? For instance, conductor might change. So the informal sector, and I wish we had a bit more time to speak about the Inera. However, we will be taking this on during Freshly Pressed 981, as we have one of the headlines addressing the launch of the Inera later today, and hopefully we can discuss some of the challenges and merits of the Inera in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Onome. Tomorrow we continue. Another edition of Business Express 981, 6:30 tomorrow morning here on Smooth 98.1. I'm Ayo Mairo-Ese. In a few minutes, we'll bring you today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981, 7:30 to be exact. In the meantime, enjoy some great music here on Smooth 98.1.
Express. Brought to you by InterSwitch. Transaction Solutions.
Bye, Ayo. Have yourself a good day.
Bye. Have a good day too. And bye to everyone.